A 2025 quarterback just decommitted from the University of Utah. And could Utah seriously flip a five-star receiver? All that and more on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We're available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments as well as on social media, where you can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X today. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's all caps, no spaces, Locked On College to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. My name is JT Wistricll, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. And on today's show, we got to talk about the possibility that Utah could flip a five-star wide receiver. Also, a little bit of championship dream, something I thought about while watching the NBA Finals tonight as it relates to Utah football, hopefully hoisting a championship. But we absolutely have to start with the news that Utah just lost out on a quarterback who was previously committed to them. That's because three-star quarterback Shaker Reisig, who is a 6', 200-pound quarterback, he's the 61st ranked quarterback overall, according to the 24/7 Sports player rating. He just decommitted from the University of Utah and now is up in the air where he'll end up, although there's already reports. And if you look at 24/7, he is currently 100% crystal ball projected to Boston College. So let's just talk about the fact that he did decommit from the University of Utah first. Is this a loss? Yes, in terms of it's a loss anytime you lose a quarterback. And I should mention, because we're going to talk about him as well, Reisig's high school teammate, Josiah Hammond, who was on a visit to Utah recently, a three-star defensive lineman that Utah was going after, 6'4", 255. He also, he didn't decommit. He wasn't committed. He just committed to Kansas after recently taking a Utah visit. Reisig actually took his Utah visit even though he was committed a few weeks back. So neither Reisig nor Hammond will be joining the University of Utah. And my thoughts on this are, it's always a disappointment when you fail to not land players you were hopeful to land. But this is also the truth of just recruiting in general, right? There always are other guys out there, and Reisig would have had a chance to be a really good quarterback. But if you're telling me, I felt like Reisig had a chance to compete for the starting job for this Utah team. Do I feel like the future of the Utah quarterback position is in danger because Reisig isn't there? I don't feel that way. And it's nothing against Reisig. It's part of that is feeling good about Isaac Wilson, feeling good about what Brandon Rose could potentially become, feeling good about Wyatt Becker. I know a lot of people are really high on him, but that's without even factoring in transfer portal quarterbacks, right? So this isn't about Reisig decommitting, more so like it's not about the player. It's about the fact that in the world of recruiting and in transfers, losing a single asset, if we're going to call Reisig as a recruit an asset, just doesn't to me be like, oh man, the sky is falling, everything is bad, because the truth is there are lots of other strong quarterbacks out there that I think Utah could get and bring in. And while I think Reisig could have been very good, I just don't, he's not an irreplaceable player, and he can listen to this and watch it back. And if he goes up there and lights it up at more than likely Boston College, then I have no problem with that at all. And it's the same thing for Hammond, right? Congrats to him for going to Kansas. It's a great opportunity for him to get in. And why Kansas over Utah? It's something I don't know. I got to say this, I got to believe maybe part of that, this is just a fan's perspective, right? Maybe playing time factored into it, because if you're going to Utah, we know the Utah defensive line has a history of being stronger than Kansas' defensive line, but I also don't want to short sell what they're doing over there at Kansas, right? They have a very good program. They're on the upward trend too. And so if he just went to Kansas because he felt like it was the best place for him to succeed, more power to him for sure. Absolutely. Going back to Reisig, just because he went to probably Boston College is more than likely. To me, that makes a lot of sense for a quarterback to choose Boston College over Utah. And some of you may be going, why in the world would you say that? But Bill O'Brien is there. And Bill O'Brien is the head coach. He's been an offensive coordinator at with the Patriots. He was a successful head coach in the NFL in terms of making the playoffs, not winning Super Bowls or anything of that nature, but had some good years with the Houston Texans. He's one of the better offensive minds in college football now, in my opinion. If you just look at what his resume brings, and we'll see how he does as a head coach, but I think his resume is absolutely tremendous. And I think it makes a lot of sense if you're a quarterback to want to go and play for him at Boston College. And also, that quarterback room isn't as strong as the one Utah has yet. So if you make sense, if you're looking at from, okay, I can go play for Bill O'Brien, have maybe a better chance to start earlier too, that's where a lot of the things start to fall into place. And this is the hard part. When these guys decommit, all we can do is say like, okay, why might this have happened? Because I've never talked to Reisig. I haven't talked to Hammond. I don't know the sources of what all went down in this, and as no one really will, right? Because you're not going to get, at least that we haven't heard yet, right? Reisig probably won't reveal everything because I'm sure he has a lot of love and appreciation for Utah for recruiting him, and Utah won't reveal everything. So you never know what kind of happens and goes down in these types of scenarios too. And yes, I was just raving about Bill O'Brien's offense, and some of you may also be listening and go, wait a minute, JT, aren't you the same guy who defends Andy Ludwig being a highly paid offensive coordinator? I absolutely am. What's the difference between Andy Ludwig and Bill O'Brien? One of them is a head coach. And that is very important when we're talking about the best offensive minds in college football. I have never once said Andy Ludwig is a top 5 offensive mind in college football, because the truth of the matter is the Lincoln Rileys, I know Utah's beat him, but he's a dang good offensive mind. He's produced Heisman caliber quarterbacks, right? You look at some other guys, right, like what Kalen DeBoer has been able to do. Obviously, Ryan Day is one that jumps to mind. The best offensive minds in college football, and now you get Chip Kelly's become an assistant coach, right? But there's a lunch we can go through. Most of them are head coaches. That's just the matter of the situation. So that's why I'm never going to go crazy being like, oh, this guy chose to play for an offensive head coach rather than come to Utah, because when you play under Kyle Whittingham, there are certain things and restrictions that you haven't always been able to do. Now we'll talk about with Jerome Myles, while that maybe could be different in the future going forward. But as it stands right now, the truth is it makes a lot of sense to me if you want to go play for an offensive mind like Bill O'Brien, and probably have a better chance to play. But that's just when you look at the situation, how I feel. One thing I find very strange is when Reisig, who I mentioned is teammates with Hammond, both these guys go to Union High School in Tulsa, did tweet out he decommitted from the University of Utah, thanked the staff and everyone for the opportunity. Hammond tweeted out the emoji of the mouth with the zipper shut, so like staying silent, not saying anything. So that is something where it's like, is there something to this? Did these guys talk? Did they feel like it wasn't the right position to them? Like, does he think he's going to be able to try to get Reisig to go to Kansas? Those are the kind of things we don't know about. I'm sure there will be messages and a stir about that a little bit, but because we don't have the information there, it's something we can't dive into. But I do want to close with this once again. Like, Reisig leaving Utah, anytime you lose a recruit, it's always a little bit of a negative, and missing out on a guy in Hammond, it hurts a little bit. But I'll also say this, and I'm going to talk about this in a show later this week, and I'm sure some of you won't agree with me. To me, high school recruiting has never been less important. It is still important. It is still absolutely important. It has never been less important, and it has never been better, basically. You've never been in a better position if you miss out on a recruit because of the transfer portal and being able to cover that. I'm going to do an entire episode on that later this week, so you guys can feel free to disagree and dive into me out there. But I'm never going to overreact when you miss a recruit, because that recruit, and just like when we get recruits, we always talk about the potential to be good, but Utah's never landed a recruit. And I don't believe, and someone can old takes expose me if I have, I've never gone, this means Utah, but I don't deal with absolutes. I don't think I have. This means Utah is going to run the Big 12. This means they're going to win the conference this year, because the truth is recruiting is a crapshoot. I talk all the time about how Utah has consistently beaten the teams that were getting the 4 and 5 stars while they were getting the 3 stars and the occasional 4 stars. So that's where recruiting is never the end all be all to me. It's how you build and develop and grow guys. And that's where I'll continue to believe in this Utah football team, and why I'm never going to overreact to them missing out on a recruit, because there are so many potential variables that could still have to go that way in order for that player to be successful, in order for him to work out all of those types of things. But it's a loss for Utah to lose Reisig for sure, but I definitely feel like it's a guy that Utah will bring in other players to the quarterback room. Same thing with Hammond. You lose out on Hammond. Would have been nice to bring him in. There's other defensive linemen this team is looking at. They will be absolutely fine, but definitely something to see how it'll be interesting to see how Utah pivots after missing out on defensive linemen and having a quarterback decommit from them. So that's some negative recruiting news. Let's talk about some potentially positive recruiting news, because there's a legit chance that Utah could get a 5-star wide receiver to flip and come to the University of Utah. That is an absolutely insane statement, but it's one that is true. And we got to discuss its possibility and likelihood in one moment. But first, I want to talk to you all about LinkedIn Talent Solutions. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours. You can hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process that much quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Once again, terms and conditions do apply. Alrighty. Let's talk about Jerome Myles yet again. Spoke briefly about Myles on yesterday's show. If you're not familiar with Jerome Myles, he's a 6'2", 205-pound wide receiver who goes to Corner Canyon High School, so right here in the Salt Lake Valley, who was originally sneakily committed to Utah and then went to Ole Miss. And since committing to Ole Miss, had gotten his rating bumped up to a 5-star wide receiver, which I would love to know the last time Utah had a 5-star wide receiver in the state of Utah. It definitely feels like it's been a little bit, and they got some guys maybe coming up the ranks of the high school rankings, so we'll have an opportunity to do that. But Myles is the first guy in a long time to do that. So the whole thing we're going to talk about here is, does Utah have a chance to flip Myles back to them? And the answer to that is yes. But let's talk about why we're even discussing this. And to do that, we need to go over to our friends at TTJH Sports, who we've quoted a few times on this show. You can follow them on X at TTJH Sports _ do a great job breaking everything down. They said they spoke. This comes to us from TTJH Sports' account. He said he spoke to 5-star wide receiver Jerome Myles after his official visit, and he said it was a very good visit. The answer, the only question I had, so it was pretty successful. Well, then X-users got to work. Someone said, okay, what was the question? That was Andrew Crane. And then Whittle Old Ute, love that handle, will I make more money here than Ole Miss? To which Jerome Myles did chime in and say wrong, which I do love that he stuck up for himself, saying, hey, okay, I'm not all about the NIL. We don't know Myles or any of these guys as what's going on in their recruiting or anything. NIL is part of the current recruiting landscape of college football. We cannot turn a blind eye to that. So I don't know how that's factoring in for Myles personally, nor do we know that for any of the recruits. But it's always going to be a part of it. But it's definitely not the only part of it. And I think I like that Myles stuck up for himself and saying, hey, just because you're hearing this is what's going on, it's not what's going on. And you're just assuming because the money's out there that it's all about the money. So then Andrew Crane jumps back in and said, I love you. What was the question that you asked? And I love this from Jerome Myles. He was just straight up honest. Is Utah gonna throw the ball more? It's absolutely a fair question. And I think one a lot of people have, especially if you're an elite receiver, right? Like if you want to go play at the University of Utah, is this a place that you can come over to and have an opportunity to get the ball put in your hands as a receiver when so often this team is known for running the ball? And one thing he did also comment on Midwestern Utes post on X where he said that the coaches said the best players are going to get the ball. We do what it takes to win. And that is something true. Utah has, I think, done a good job of maximizing the best players in their offense. Dalton Kincaid has eaten at Utah. Brant Keithy has eaten at Utah. It took Utah some time to figure out with Bryson Barnes, how do we maximize Devon Valen? I definitely thought there were more things they could have done there to maximize Devon, but it was also a backup quarterback. And I thought once things really clicked with Devon, that's something to me that if you look over the second half of the season when Devon had some of his best games, like the Washington game, you can replicate a lot of that to earlier season success. So I'm very curious to see with Myles because I don't think signing day isn't until in December. So I don't think, because there was a new signing rule passed, but I don't think that goes into effect until next year, I want to say. So I don't expect to see Myles sign before the season. But if he wanted to sit back and wait, he could just see like, okay, the Utah coaches say they're going to pass the ball more. Well, are they actually going to pass the ball more? He's going to get an opportunity to see that this year with Cam Rising back there and see what this Utah offense looks like with their starting quarterback and everything opened up offensively as they hope it to be. Let's not forget this Utah offense back in 2022 averaged 38.6 points per game with Cam Rising under center. This is also a Utah team that when you're talking about their passing yards per game, it was a lot more impressive. It was 249.2 per game in 2022. Look at it at 2023, right? 23.2 points per game, and the passing numbers all the way down to 165.8. What changed? The quarterback changed. With Cam Rising back in there, I expect Utah to get up to the 38 again this year. I think you look at some of these Big 12 teams and these defenses, they are susceptible. I think it's a favorable schedule for Utah, one they should have offensive success. I have some questions along the offensive line. I think it's going to be a good group. I have questions of whether or not they can be great. I do not have questions about the weapons, especially in the passing game, just at Cam Rising's disposal. When you talk about Brant Kuithe, yes, some of the health things, if you want to say that, I understand it. But a fully healthy Brant Kuithe, which we expect him to be because of how long he has been removed from this injury, absolute dog. How about Dorian Singer, former 1,000-yard receiver who's coming off a down season, excited to bounce back and will be the focal point amongst the receivers. Damon Alford, who Utah picked up from Syracuse, a 600-yard season under his belt just last year. How about Money Parks being the deep threat? We saw him and Cam Rising's chemistry at several points throughout the season and what they were able to do. Even a Mekhi Bernard, a reliable checkdown guy that I can still vividly remember in the 2022 Pac-12 championship game, Cam Rising finding on that last drive when Utah made the comeback to tie it all up. I think it was 17-3 to make it 17-7 at the half, or I might be getting fuzzy on the details, whatever it was that game. But on that big last touchdown drive before the half, he connected with Mekhi multiple times. Utah has weapons in the passing game. And I think they were going to maximize and open it up more with a quarterback of Cam Rising's caliber come this year. I think Kyle Whittingham, as much as he's been protective and doesn't want to turn the ball over, has grown more willing to throw the ball over the years. And I think we're going to see that a lot this year too, because you are going to deal with some high-scoring Big 12 offenses. I expect Utah to be able to hold a lot of them in check. But there will probably be a game where the Utah defense does have a bad half or things of that scenario where it's going to be a higher scoring effort. And I think Utah is going to be able to move the ball when they need to. Cam Rising has proven the ability to make big plays and big throws. And, a lot of this I'm talking about Cam Rising. The truth is I have faith in a lot of these younger guys that Utah has, or just the future quarterbacks that Utah is going to bring in, because I trust the coaching staff and the players they evaluate and determine are best for this system. And I think whoever comes in, we're only going to continue to see this Utah offense continue to feature the passing game prominently. And I do believe they'll do a good job getting the ball to their best players. I think Utah is probably telling Jerome Myles, hey, watch Dorian Singer this year, because I think their goal is to get Dorian a lot of touches. And I would hope that then Jerome Myles looks at it and goes, okay, not only can I reteam with my former high school quarterback in Isaac Wilson, but I can also get maximized and get a lot of touches. And Myles is an incredible talent, right? I mean, we've broken down his game a few times on this show before, but when you're looking at the overall route tree, he can really do everything there. The speed, the acceleration, the ability to get in and out of his breaks, got strong hands too, take the top off the defense. There's a reason he's the best wide receiver in the state. Actually, according to 24/7, he is the top overall player in the state. He's actually the number 5th wide receiver, and he's the 31st ranked player nationally. Not too shabby for a receiver from Utah. Not always known for producing the best receivers, at least for the last couple of years. I just know Utah's had some really good receivers, but not to the level nationally that some other places have had. Myles is the exception to that. So I think there is tangible evidence to prove when Utah has their starting quarterback in place that they are going to feature the pass prominently. I think there's reasons to believe this year too, we're going to see the playbook that has continued to evolve and expand, feature weapons like Alford, Singer, and Parks in a way that has Myles enticed and excited to come to Utah. I believe Utah is very much still in it for Myles, the ability to play with his high school quarterback again in Isaac Wilson, the guy who just won a state championship, right? The ability to come to the University of Utah, a place that he's obviously known very well from his time out here, and, come and compete for Big 12 championships, something he's going to have a great opportunity to do. So I think Utah is absolutely still in it for Myles, thanks to a great pitch. And I think if you look at the numbers from Utah's offense in the past, when they've had their guy at quarterback, there's reason to believe there are still special things ahead for this offense, especially in the pass game. As I mentioned, we'll continue to talk about some recruiting stuff this week. Really excited for you guys, and I'll probably upload it tomorrow. The discussion I had with Spencer McLaughlin, who does host Locked On College Football, about the stage we are in of Utah recruiting, or just of college football recruiting in the NIL era with transfer portals and everything going on. That will be on tomorrow's show. Before we get out of here today, I was watching the Boston Celtics just win the NBA Finals. Sorry, any Mavs fans who are hoping not to catch any strays on this podcast. And I'm not going to talk really about the game, of course. This is Locked On Utes. But I want to talk about what it reminded me of and just watching championships get raised, what I'm hoping to see for Utah football in 2024. I'm going to tell you what I mean by that in one moment. But first, I want to talk to you all about our great friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Summertime means baseball, and the more and you can bet on is all at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from who's going to hit one out of the park, who's going to win. It's all available at FanDuel. You can visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. All-Star Game is coming up early July, but we still got time to see who are going to be the players that step out and stand out in the biggest moments in these games. How's it going to shake out? Which pitcher is going to overperform? Which batter is going to have a big game? Are you feeling the Aaron Judge love with everything he's have going on? We got Shohei Ohtani out here despite all the controversies, so lots of places you can go at FanDuel. So make sure you guys head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon to bet on all of the MLB action with the NBA season coming to a close. Head over to FanDuel today to get everything you want with the MLB. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Alrighty, talking about the championship feeling. So I was watching as the Boston Celtics defeated the Dallas Mavericks, and of course, at the end, you see them raise the championship. And of course, they did it at home, so they were surrounded by all of their fans as they hoisted the Larry O'Brien Trophy. And all I couldn't stop thinking about as I sat there getting ready to record this episode of Locked On Utes was not just the past times that Utah did it. I felt a little nostalgic, of course, because of those are just awesome memories going back to 21 and 22. But it also made me hopeful, excited, and just optimistic and just really looking forward to this season because I think Utah has a great opportunity. Those of you who are listening at this point in the show and do so routinely know I'm very high on Utah this fall. I think it's understandable as to why. I could list the reasons on another show, but I'll just say this, especially for all of us who have spent time in the comments dealing with the Big 12 fans who it's going to be hard for Utah to win the Big 12 because it's not easy to win a conference championship. But the amount of Big 12 fans who act like it's asinine to think that Utah could come into this conference and win right away clearly haven't been paying attention to what Cam Rising and Kyle Whittingham have done in the 2 years they've been able to really play prominently together. It's been special, and it has a chance to be a special year this year. So I just couldn't help but fantasize about that moment when Utah is hoisting a Big 12 trophy, Cam Rising being named the game MVP. We see Mekhi Bernard, Brant Keithy, all these guys who missed so much time last season coming back from injury, having monster games, having it all worked out, and seeing Utah win their new conference's championship game in the first year of its new look 16-team format before they changed the dang stinking name to potentially the All-State Conference, just have them win the Big 12 this year is something I would just love to see. And not even just so I can jump in the comments and tell everyone I told you so. That's not really my style. I don't go back on old comments and tell people, oh, you should have thought about this. You should have thought about that. I don't like to do that. But just being vindicated for like believing in watching this team is something I think we all love when we go out there and make predictions. And this Utah team has a chance to do that. So I really hope that one of the next few times when I'm watching a team raise a championship, it's the University of Utah in the 2024 college football season for Big 12 play. Would love to see them lift the playoff championship. They just got to even get there first to make some history. But I think Utah absolutely has a chance to make some history, do something special this year. And I hope that the same feeling all those Celtics fans got to experience watching their team raise the Larry O'Brien Trophy is something we get to do when we watch Utah hopefully raise the Big 12 trophy. That is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. I appreciate all of you for listening, especially all of you who listen to the end of the show. I'd love to reward you guys if you do listen to the end of the show. Leave a comment below about what you'd love to see me talk about. I've been trying to incorporate recruiting more because that's something that you guys have been clamoring for. And there's obviously been a lot of big recruiting news lately. So I do listen and I do check out the comments. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you again for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. And we'll be back with you tomorrow for more Utah football and Utah athletics related content.